Welcome everybody to a tour of my newbie YouTube studio room. So let's start with the sound panels. So these are from a company called Acoustamac, and they're not terribly expensive. The plain ones, I think, are less than 50 bucks each. And the ones that have photos on them, like that one, run about 3 times as much at least, maybe more. And those photos were just the stock ones. If I had to do it over again, although I like the Railay Beach in Thailand one, I would probably use one of my own pictures. But I do have a little bit of sound treatment, as you can see, and even going up to the top above kind of that entranceway sill. Those are just cheap Amazon square panels that I actually folded up a little bit, and that turned out pretty nice. So I'm not in a quiet neighborhood. There's a busy street right in front of me. As you can see, I've got an iPad there, which is not necessarily for the YouTube stuff. It's just I like the room to be multi-purpose. So sometimes I like to just hang out in here and watch YouTube videos. So you can see the TV there. And if I turn that on, this is an old Panasonic. I think I bought this 32-inch TV in 2005, sometime around there. But it has an SD card slot, and it's a 1980 by 1080 panel. So if I just create my own little logo and pop it in on the SD card, that kind of becomes part of my background for the video. And in terms of lighting, I'm just rolling with a practical light there, and I've got one in the ceiling, but fortunately, the ceiling light is on a dimmer, and so that is actually quite useful. Now, the audio setup that I typically use is either that mic, which is the Lewitt, or this mic, which is a Rode Pod mic. But right now I'm just rocking with a Rode Wireless Go 2 transmitter, and then I'm recording with my inexpensive cell phone, and I'll sync this up later in post. But getting back to the lights, I've got this Neewer panel, which is like a $100 light, not super expensive. And then over here, I have an iVeezy. I think it's the iVeezy G2, something like that. And then both of those microphones are connected to a Sound Devices MixPre 6. And like many YouTubers who have gadget channels and like to review tech stuff, I'm a musician. So I've got a Boss Katana, which is a wonderful practice amp. And I'm an amateur guitar player, but I was a professional bass player for many, many years. And so I've got an old GK rig and a much nicer bass rig. Over here, just got my Rode kit. So if I'm doing stuff here in the studio, I will definitely use the Lewitt or the Pod mic. But when I'm traveling in Southeast Asia, I'll take the ZV-E10, and I'll take these as my audio source. Now, underneath this table, I wanted to make it fairly clean. So I'll show you what I did underneath here. So you can see I've got the cables, the XLR cables for the mic are just kind of suspended by some cheap plastic clips that you can buy on Amazon. But you can also see that I rigged a piece of PVC to go from the back of the table to the front. And what I've got here are two USB-Cs that I can pull up. And then I've got two USB-Cs. Now, one is for power. It's a charging cable, and it's connected to a power outlet underneath the desk in the back there. And the other one is also USB-C, but it's terminated in HDMI so that I can just plug my iPad in and hang out here in the studio / man cave. So let's see what we got. The camera that I normally run is this ZVE10, which is a camera that I really like a lot. But one thing about the ZVE10 is that it uses the small battery. And so recording in 4K 30, that only gives me about, I think, 45 minutes of record time. Now, that's one of the reasons to have the USB-C power cable, because if I plug that in, I don't get unlimited recording, but when I've got the charging cable plugged into it and I'm recording, I only lose about 15 or 20% of the battery per hour. So normally I don't need to do that, but if I'm doing something that I know is going to be longer, like a podcast interview, that is what I'm going to do. So as you can see, having both of these mics on the Elgato boom arms lets me do a number of things. So if I'm just doing my talking head gadget stuff for a view of approximately this, I can alternate between this on one video, and then the next time I do a video, I can have something else. Of course, I'll move the lights around to see how that would work. And then what I normally do is I sit down here, and the camera is about 3.5 feet away from me, so I can see the audio levels. And the only reason I like to have audio meters enabled on the ZVE10, because I'm just using the camera mic as a scratch track, I will sync up something else like this mic, this Lewitt in post. But when I can see those level meters running, I know that I'm in video mode and not stills photo mode, because the way you press the button on the original ZVE10, it can be confusing. So basically that's what I'm looking at when I'm filming myself, or I just take the camera and move it over here, and then I shoot into that corner. Now, of course, the other thing I set this up to do, if I want to, is to use both mics as a video podcast. However, with just two mics, that's only one host and one guest, although I could rig another mic up, probably on a desk stand. My issue right now, though, is that although I'd like to maybe invite some people over for doing a video podcast, I've only got one good camera, and that's the ZVE10. And I could use this cell phone, which I'm running on a gimbal right now, but it only shoots 1080 which doesn't give me any room to crop in really, but I could rig a stand like this, just a desk stand set up with a phone holder. But it gives me options. If I want to do my own video podcast, I could do that. And I guess also, since I can change the logo or the splash screen on the TV, I just got to pop something on an SD card, I could potentially do podcasts for other people and maybe do something to change the background here. Now my standard lens for the ZV-E10 is the new Viltrox 20mm f2.8. I like that lens because when I'm roaming around with it, when I go to work, sometimes I'll just throw that in my bag, and I've got a camera at 20 mils on a Sony APS-C. It's a 30mm equivalent field of view, and sometimes I'd like to have something wider like a 16, but it's a good all-around lens, and it's small, and it's lightweight. And because it's actually designed as a full-frame lens on APS-C, I don't really have to worry about corner sharpness as much, because as a cheap lens, it's not going to be super sharp in the corners. Maybe acceptable on full frame, but should look much better in that regard on APS-C. The other lenses that I have are the kit lens. And whether you're a Sony user or Canon or Panasonic or Fuji or any other brand, I would recommend that you always buy the camera with the kit lens, just because it gives you a spare lens in case anything happens to one of your more expensive ones. So I just have 3 lenses. Bought it with the kit lens. Then I got the Sigma 30, which works fairly well. And then finally, the Viltrox. So the question for me is, how much do I really want to do a video podcast? I think it would be cool and kind of fun to do. I'll probably just start off maybe even using that sucker. It's the base model iPad, but the front-facing camera on that iPad will actually shoot 4K at, I think, 24 or 30. But rigging it up on the table is going to be a pain. So I'd love to have the new ZV-E10 Mark II, and I could buy it body only, and then I would use the kit lens on one of them and this Viltrox on the other. So some other minor things that I'm not really using right now. Audio source amp, which is great. There's a Scheidt Bitfrost DAC. A cool old tube amp that came out of a 1949 Bell & Howell 16mm projector system, which is super cool. And some ELAC Uni-Fi, I think B5s, which are super sweet and an incredible value. So that's about all. Like I said, I'm just a newbie YouTuber, so we'll see how well the studio works out. Hopefully doing a little bit of video podcasting in the future, but so far so good. I think it's working out okay. That's a wrap. Leave some comments below, and I'll see you on the next one.